thank you for coming to this afternoon's session. My name is Ruth Benson. I'm the Employer Liaison Officer for NILGOSC. I'm going to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. I will be keeping you all automatically muted just for background noise, but you will be able to unmute yourself at the end if you have any questions. As we go through today's session, because of the number of attendees, I would like to keep the questions till the end of today's session, if possible, please. But please do feel free to type any questions you may have in the chat, and I'll try to get to them towards the end of today's session. So as I said, my name is Ruth. I'm the Employer Liaison Officer for NILGOSC. I'm here to talk to you today about the scheme benefits for you as members and potential members of the local government pension scheme in Northern Ireland. I do know that we have at least one employer who has forwarded this pension information session details to some teaching staff, so apologies if you are a member of the teachers pension scheme or indeed the university superann. This is not for you. You're perfectly welcome to stay, but this is only for members and prospective members of the NILGOSC pension scheme, the LGPS NI. Okay, so I am going to get stuck in. I'm going to talk to you today for around about 40 minutes. I'm going to look at a little bit of the background of the scheme and what the overall benefits are of being a member. We'll cover a little bit about how much you pay in, and then we'll look at what happens whenever you leave the scheme before retirement. We're also going to look at the different types of retirement that are available in the scheme, and there's even a calculation for showing you how a pension is worked out. Roughly halfway through this session, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Sinead Nicholson, who's going to take you through the online demonstration for My NILGOSC Pension Online. And then finally, we'll come back to me for any questions. Just before I get started, I see Kimberly has her hand raised. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask me a question, Kimberly?
Oh, thanks very much. And can I just check the sessions were the information about them, were they circulated to everybody in NILGOSC?
They were published to all NILGOSC employers, and presumably they will have forwarded that information on to their members.
Okay, because sorry, forgive me, because that doesn't seem to be the case, and I didn't understand then why I got an invite. But so you're saying you put it through to the college, so the NILGOSC employer?
Yes, we've given it to 169 of the employers that participate in the NILGOSC scheme.
Okay.
Are you not a member of our scheme?
No, I am a member. I'm just curious as to why other colleagues didn't get it.
Oh,
I mean, there may be some reason.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand, if you understand. So I'll go back to the college.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, thanks. Sorry for that, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to get stuck in. First and foremost, what is a pension with the local government pension scheme in Northern Ireland? We are a defined benefit scheme, so that puts us slightly different to the likes of the defined contribution schemes, like a personal pension that you may have, or a private pension. With the defined benefit scheme, the benefits that we pay you in the event of your retirement are set out in law. So it doesn't matter about investment performance or anything like that. The scheme regulations are what dictates what benefits we'll pay you. We are currently a career average revalued earnings scheme. Sometimes it's referred to as a care scheme, or career average for short. For those of you that have been with us since before 2015, you'll remember whenever we were a final salary scheme, we had two different versions of the final salary scheme, and I'll cover that in a little bit more detail in this afternoon's session. Your pension, when it comes into payment, is payable for life. So it's not like there's a pot of money with a finite amount of money in it that's eventually going to run out. Your pension, once it comes into payment, is payable for life. However long you may live, your pension will be paid. And of course, it's index linked, which means it'll rise each year in line with inflation. The scheme operates what we call contractual enrolment, and essentially what that means is it's a part of your contract of employment that if you're under 75 and you have a contract of employment of 3 months or more, then you will be a member of the scheme from day one, although you can choose to opt out at any time if you wish. The main benefits I'm going to cover just in brief on this slide. First and foremost, we have the fact that your employer contributes. Most of our employers are paying 19% of your pay into the pension scheme. Some of our employers do, depending on their emission agreement, they may pay slightly different amounts. If you opt out of the scheme, unfortunately, you don't get to pocket that extra 19%. You will just lose it. So it is a valuable part of your remuneration package. Over and above that, of course, we will offer you a pension. That pension, as I explained, is index linked and it'll rise each year in line with inflation, and it'll be payable for however long that you live. In addition to the pension, there is also redundancy protection. If you are 55 or over and your employer makes you redundant, we will pay you out a pension from that point in time. Most importantly, we won't apply any early payment reductions in the event of a redundancy. Your benefits will be protected from reductions. We also offer ill health protection, and with ill health protection there is no minimum age requirement. We just ask that you have 2 years membership in the scheme before you apply for ill health protection. Should anything happen to you and you're no longer capable of carrying out the duties of your job from now until your state pension age, we will pay out an ill health pension that will include an enhancement which is dependent upon the severity of your illness. When it comes to death benefits, we have 2 elements that are provided by the scheme. First and foremost, we have life cover. Now, for an active member in this scheme, if you should die while you're actively contributing to the scheme, we will pay out a death grant to your loved ones to the value of 3 times your annual pay, and that's tax-free. To that death grant, that one-off lump sum, we will also pay any survivors' pensions to any eligible survivors that you leave behind. As I say, I will cover each of these in more detail as we work through this afternoon's session. Okay, so how much does this cost? We have a range of contribution rates that span from 5.5% up to 10.5%. And the amount that you will pay is determined by your annual salary. If you're part-time, it's your part-time pay that will determine what contribution rate you pay. For example, if you are earning £22,500 each year, you will fall into band 2, and it means you'll pay 5.8% of your pay. In addition to your employee contributions, we do, of course, have the employer contribution, which for most of our employers is 19%. So what you pay into the scheme is determined by your earnings. However, there is a little bit of flexibility within the scheme. There is one way that you can pay less into the scheme, and that's known as the 50-50 section. And there are 2 ways that you can pay more into the scheme. The first one is additional pension contributions, or APC for short. And the second way is additional voluntary contributions, or AVC for short. And if we look first at the 50-50 section, this was initially brought into the scheme in 2015 as an alternative to opting out. We were finding that some members were opting out. Maybe they were saving for a mortgage or their house deposit, or maybe they had a wedding coming up. For whatever reason, they were looking to save every penny coming in. And we were finding that those people were opting out to do that. The real drawback with that is that it's not just your pension you're opting out from, it's all the other benefits that come along with that, your life cover, your ill health enhancement, your survivors benefits, all of that. So this was initially brought in as sort of like a halfway house, half in, half out. If you elect to join the 50-50 section, in a nutshell, you will pay half the contributions and you will receive half the pension. This is available to any member. You can opt into or out of the 50-50 section as often as you like. But it is important to note that while you're in the 50-50 section, you will still retain the same level of life cover and ill health enhancement that you would if you were in the main section. The reason why we can still afford to offer you those benefits in full is because it's only your contributions that are halved. We're still getting the full 19% from your employer. It is designed to be a short-term option. The last thing we want is somebody opting into the 50-50 section in their 20s and then turning around a handful of decades later and wondering where the rest of their pension is. So we have designed it as a short-term option. Every 3 years, in line with your employer's automatic re-enrolment date, anybody who's in the 50-50 section will be moved back into the main section. So if you do opt into it and forget about it, the longest you can remain in the 50-50 section is 3 years. That doesn't mean, though, that you have to remain in the main section. If your employer moves you back to the main section and you wish to operate permanently in the 50-50 section, you can do that, but the onus is on you to fill in another form and make a conscious decision every 3 years that, yes, I'm happy, I want to opt out of half of my pension. But the option's there, and if you do wish to opt into the 50-50 section or indeed back out of it, there's a form LGS 12 or LGS 11 that you need to fill in and give to your employer. You can either download those off our website or you can access them from My NILGOSC Pension online. I do have to point out, while you're in the 50-50 section, that your pension will not build up as quickly. Indeed, it's only building up at half the rate. Moving on to the first method of paying more into the scheme, we're going to look at additional pension contributions, or an APC for short. With APCs, you decide how much extra annual pension you want to purchase for yourself. It may be that you want to buy an extra £1,000 of yearly pension, or indeed you can go up to the maximum of £8,131 of extra pension. You can choose to pay these extra contributions either via a lump sum or through your payroll. You will, of course, receive tax relief whenever you are making additional contributions, just as you would with your normal pension contributions. And it is important to note that if you are looking to purchase extra pension, you will have to pass a good health medical. The reason for that is, should anything happen to you at some point during the contract, and you need to retire on health grounds, we will treat that contract as paid in full, even though it isn't. So we just need a bit of a surety up front that you're likely to be in good health for duration of the contract. Purchasing an APC is also how you cover lost pension. For example, if you've taken a career break or any authorised unpaid absences of more than 30 days. If you wish to cover the lost pension during that authorised absence, you can do this via an APC. However, there's no medical required, and if you are doing this within 30 days of returning from your absence, your employer is obliged to pay 2/3 of the cost. Whereas when you're buying extra pension, although the regulations permit your employer to share the cost, in this day and age, nobody has any spare money, and we really just don't see any employer sharing the cost for additional pension. The cost for additional pension is dependent on your age at the start of purchase. The younger you are whenever you start, the more financially efficient it works out. And also it'll take into consideration whether you're paying via a lump sum or the length of contract. There is a link to our website in this slide that will take you to the additional pension calculator. And just please note there are 2 calculators there. One is for purchasing extra pension, which is probably at full cost to yourself. And the other calculator is for lost pension, where your employer will be paying 2/3 of the cost. So just make sure you're using the right calculator. But with an additional pension contribution, your contributions are coming to NILGOSC. You are buying scheme pension. You know upfront how much you're purchasing, and that amount is guaranteed. It is in fact index linked as well, so it'll increase each year in line with inflation. The drawback is that you're probably going to be funding this entirely yourself. The other way of paying extra into the scheme is the AVC. Now, with the AVC, your contributions don't come to NILGOSC and you don't know upfront how much you're getting. With an AVC, you've got much more flexibility on how much you pay. You can choose to pop in however much you wish. You also have the ability to increase that or decrease it, stop it, start it. You've got a lot more flexibility on how much is going in. The drawback is that it's not a guaranteed benefit and you don't have control over how much it's going to be worth at the end. Your contributions will go to the Prudential, who administer our in-house AVC fund. And one of the benefits about an AVC is the fact that usually you can take back your full AVC fund value as tax-free cash, as long as you are within the HMRC rules and the 25% maximum, which I will explain in a bit more detail later on this afternoon. If you do wish to commence paying AVCs with the Prudential, you can either follow the link that's in your slide to the Prudential's website, or I will show you how you can access it on our website slightly later on. There is a telephone number for the Prudential, but please note this is only for people who are already contributing to the AVC scheme. If you want to set up your account, the only way to do that is on their website. I've put in a wee slide here just to mention about the fact that there are tax implications on pension savings. Obviously, whenever you're paying into this scheme, either to the normal contributions or any additional, you're going to get tax relief on your pension savings. However, the taxman is only happy that you're getting all that tax relief if you are operating within two limits. One of them is the lifetime allowance, and that is due to be abolished shortly in the coming months. So I'll not dwell on that one, but the annual allowance is due to remain, and this is the amount that your pension can grow by in a year without you having to pay any additional tax charges. Currently that's 60,000, so it won't impact too many of us, but if you are thinking of putting the maximum into APCs and AVCs, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that you may wish to seek independent specialist tax advice before doing so. Okay, so what happens if you leave the scheme before retirement? Maybe you are taking up new employment elsewhere. If you have 2 years membership in this scheme, whenever you leave, you will be entitled to what we call deferred benefits. If you're leaving the scheme with less than 2 years membership, you will be entitled to a refund. Now, with deferred benefits, we do the same calculation that we do for somebody who is retiring. The only difference is that we don't bring it into payment immediately. What we'll do is we'll get your final pay details from your employer and we will close off your account. We will write out to you and let you know how much your deferred benefits are with NILGOSC. And then each year, in line with inflation, we will increase your deferred pension account. We'll send you an updated benefit statement every August and you'll be able to keep track of your deferred benefits. You do have some options. You can choose to transfer to another pension provider. Most pension providers have a time limit on when they will accept a transfer in, and it's usually 1 year. So if it is something you're considering doing, don't wait, get onto that immediately. There's no cost or anything involved with us providing a quotation, and there's no obligation. You don't have to proceed with the transfer if you wish to leave it with us. You also have the option that if you take up further employment with one of the NILGOSC employers in our scheme, you will have the ability to aggregate or combine your NILGOSC pension pots. But again, there'll be a time limit on that. It'll be only in your first year of rejoining the scheme. We do have a guide that's specifically for leaving the scheme before retirement, and it's the little grey icon at the bottom of this slide. You can access this either on your online account or on our website, and there's a lot more information there that if that would be relevant to you. Moving on to the different types of retirement that are available in the scheme. Firstly, we're going to look at voluntary retirement. Voluntary retirement can either be early, normal or late. The earliest that anybody in the UK can currently retire is age 55. However, the government is increasing the minimum retirement age from 55 to 57 from the 6th of April 2028. I think their intention here is to keep the minimum retirement age within 10 years of the state pension age. So as we see that increase to 68 in the future, we may also see the minimum retirement age increasing again, but watch this space. Currently, it's age 55, and we're just going to wait and see to see what protections are available for any current scheme members. But normal pension age in the career average scheme is the point in time that we will pay your pension out in full without reductions. And that's linked to your state pension age, whatever that is by the time we get there. There's a link there on the slides that will take you to the government's website if you want to calculate your state pension, or Sinead will show you how you can access that on your online account. If you want to retire any earlier than your state pension age, we will apply actuarial reductions in accordance with how many years early you are retiring. Similarly, if you decide to retire after your state pension age, we will apply increases on account of potentially paying that over a shorter period of time. So if you really love your job and you want to keep on working past state pension age, you can do so, and you will still continue building up pension in the scheme. The only requirement is that your pension must be paid by your 75th birthday. This next slide here, if you can see the numbers, this is looking at the amount of reductions that would apply if you wanted to retire early. So if, like me, you have a state pension age of 68, if you wanted to go at 55, that would be 13 years early, and there would be a 45% reduction to your pension. I don't know about you, but I can't afford to lose half my pension, so I'm not retiring at 55. However, I am assured that if I were to do that, I'm not losing half my pension. I'm instead having my pension paid for twice as long as expected. So that's the thinking behind these reductions. The design is for cost neutrality. We essentially have a pension pot that we are assuming that's going to come into payment at a set point in time. However, if you want that starting point to kick in any earlier, it means that we have to spread that amount over a longer period of time. So we will instead apply the reductions. Bottom line is, if you're thinking of going early, get online and run a retirement quotation and find out what the percentage reduction means to your bottom line pay packet before you make any decisions. I do want to mention, while we're here, it's only your care pot that would get reduced by the 13 years. If you have final salary benefits, you will still retain an earlier payable age for your final salary benefits. So not all your benefits would be reduced by 45%. You may see that some of your benefits would have smaller reductions. Indeed, if you have any 85-year rule protections, that would reduce the amount of reduction as well. Other types of retirement in the scheme, we have redundancy and business efficiency. I'm not an expert in employment law. My understanding is with redundancy, it's the post that's going, but with business efficiency, it's the person that's going. However, as far as your NILGOSC pension goes, you'll be treated exactly the same. If your employer makes you redundant or you accept termination of your employment on the grounds of business efficiency, if you're 55 or over when this happens, we will bring your pension into payment, and the key thing is that we won't apply that 45% reduction. There is no reduction applied to your redundancy benefits. Instead, we will invoice your employer for the strain on the fund for paying the pension out for a longer period of time. And that goes for whether it's compulsory redundancy or voluntary. There's no difference between those two levels of benefits. The same amount is payable. That's not a choice that your employer has to make. That is a protection that is built into the regulations for you. The next type of retirement is flexible retirement. This was designed to be a sort of gradual move into eventual retirement. If you decide to, at the age of 55 or over, with your employer's consent, if you decide to either reduce the hours that you work each week, or you take a job with less responsibility and less pay, you can draw your pension from that point in time. So you'll continue working on in a reduced capacity. You'll still be getting wages, albeit reduced. And instead, we will then give you the option to bring all or some of your benefits into payment. You'll also have the opportunity to take a tax-free lump sum. You will remain an active scheme member in your reduced post, so you'll still have your ill health protection, redundancy protection, things like that. And it also means then that at some point in the future, when you do fully retire, there'll be another little pension pot that will come into payment and another opportunity to take tax-free cash. You need your employer's consent because your employer needs to ensure that normal operations can continue. So each employer will have a policy on when they will agree to flexible retirement. I know some employers have specified there needs to be a minimum reduction of a certain percentage. But if that's something you're interested in, do have a chat with your HR department and find out what your employer's terms are for agreeing to flexible retirement. And the last type of retirement then is ill health retirement. I mentioned at the start of this session that there is no minimum age requirement for ill health retirement. The only requirement is that you have 2 years scheme membership, or if you have less than that, but you have transferred in benefits, that will automatically entitle you to qualify for the ill health retirement. If for whatever reason you're no longer capable of carrying out the duties of your job from now until your state pension age, we will pay you out an ill health pension. That pension, importantly, will get paid out. We won't apply any reductions for early payment. Instead, we will add on an enhancement. And the enhancement, there are 2 tiers. Tier 1 is really for the most severe types of illnesses, really where you're never going to work again. If that's the case, if you're assessed by one of our doctors and they confirm it's a Tier 1, you will get your pension paid out, and the enhancement will include 100% of the future pension that you would have built up if you remained working in the scheme up to your state pension age. With Tier 2, you still have to be permanently incapable of carrying out your duties in this job from now until state pension age, but there is a possibility that at some point down the line you might be capable of undertaking gainful employment at some point down the line. If that's the case, we'll still pay out your pension, we'll still add on an enhancement, but this time it's only a quarter of the future pension that you would have built up that gets added on to your current pension savings. It's something that we hope none of us ever needs, but it is a very valuable protection should we find ourselves unable to continue with employment. And it is important to note that this is linked, the enhancement is linked to your state pension age. So as we see that increasing, we'll also see the level of enhancement increasing as well. So how exactly a pension is worked out? Essentially what we need to do is we need to have a separate pension account for each job or employment that you hold. It may be that you have deferred benefits with another NILGOSC employer, or indeed if you have 2 part-time jobs, you will have 2 separate pension accounts with us. Your pension in a career average scheme builds up at a rate of 1/49th of your pay each year. So your employer will tell us what your earnings are for that year. We'll take that pay, we'll divide it by 49, and that's the amount of pension that gets banked into your account each year. It is a revalued earnings scheme, and this is where inflation comes in. Your pension account will be increased each year in line with inflation. And apologies if you're not a numbers person, I'll do my best to try to keep this slide as simple as I can. This is an example of somebody being in a care scheme from when it started back in 2015-16. If you look at the bottom of the table there, that was year 1. You'll see that the opening balance in year 1 was 0 because that was the start of the career average scheme. So we all started with 0 in our opening balance. Come the end of the year, the employer tells us what the pay is, and for simplicity only, I have kept the pay at 22,000 for each year. They were in the main section of the scheme, so the build-up rate is a 49th. So we take that 22,000, divide it by 49, and the amount of earned pension is 448.98, and that's how much gets banked into the pension account each year. Please note, however, if you do work more than that during the year, maybe you had a period of acting up, or perhaps you put in a lot of overtime in 1 year, as your pay increases, so will the amount of earned pension. It will simply be your total pay for that year divided by 49. If you're in the 50-50 section, the build-up rate becomes a 98th, and that's where you see half the amount of pension then being banked into your pension account. We have a closing balance, which is the current year's pension savings plus the total of all the previous year's worth of pension savings. That then gets linked to inflation, and in April of last year we had a nice 10.1% increase that we got to apply to everybody's benefits. However, that's not always the case. If we look back to year one in 2015, we were actually in a negative inflation situation, so we had to actually reduce everybody's care pots by 0.1%, and it meant that that 448.98 in year one got reduced to 448.53. Thankfully, since then, we've had positive inflation, so we've been able to increase everybody's accounts since then. But I do want to point out that negative inflation will only impact your pension pot while you're actively contributing. If you have left the scheme either as a deferred member or as a pensioner, we will never reduce the pension once we have calculated it. The worst we'll do in a negative inflation position is we will keep it the same value that it was last year. It's only as an active member that you can see negative inflation having an impact on your pension savings. I think the thinking behind that is while you're an active member, you've got an opportunity to make additional contributions if you want to offset any negative inflation. But as I say, last year we had a whopping 10.1% increase, and it has then at the end of this example care pot a total annual pension in the care pot of £4,229 and some pence. This coming April, I think the inflation is set to be 6.7%, so we are going to see another increase this coming April, but just not quite as big as we saw last year. It's at this point that I highlight the importance of a pension benefit statement. Back when we were in a final salary scheme, I used to get my annual benefit statement every year, and it would always be based on the current pay, whereas in a final salary scheme, your current pay doesn't matter. The only pay that matters is your final pay at some point in the future. So it was all fine and well to get your annual benefit statement and put it in your drawer of important things to think about at a later date. But now that we're in a career average scheme, every year counts. So it is so very important that you do look at your annual benefit statement and you check that pay figure, because if for whatever reason your employer has given us the wrong pay, we'll take that wrong pay and divide it by 49 and bank the wrong amount of pension in your account. If you do spot any errors, it is highly unlikely because we have so many checks in place, but if the odd one slips through and you do spot an error, you just need to get in contact with your employer and they'll let us know to put in the correct pay. Sinead, whenever she gets to do her demonstration, she'll show you the bit that I want you to check each summer. Okay, so what about for those of you who joined before April 15 when the care scheme started? If you have membership dating back to before April 2009, you will have membership in our old 80th scheme. That was a final salary scheme and the accrual rate was an 80th, so we sometimes refer to it as the old 80th scheme. When you're calculating a pension in a final salary scheme, we take your final pay, and now that is your final pay in the future, whatever it may be by the time you leave. It's not the pay that happened when this scheme closed in 2009. It is still linked to your current and future final pay. So when we know that, we'll take that pay, we'll multiply it by the length of years and days you have membership in this scheme, and we'll divide it by the accrual rate, which is 80. So in this example, I've used a final pay of 22,000 and 20 years in the 80th scheme. That would result in an annual pension of £5,500. One of the benefits of the old 80th scheme was that you were entitled to an automatic tax-free lump sum on retirement, and that was equal to 3 times your annual pension. So in this example of £5,500 of annual pension, they were getting a one-off tax-free lump sum of £16,500. Then in April 2009, we moved to the 60th scheme. It's still final salary, so it's still linked to your future final salary, whatever that may be. And we multiply it by your length of years and days membership in the 60th scheme. I've put in 6 years because that's the maximum that anybody had when they were contributing through from April 09 to March 2015. But we've increased the accrual rate from an 80th up to a 60th. So it means that the 22,000 multiplied by the years and days divided by 60 would have given an annual pension of £2,200. So if you have membership of either of these two schemes, we will have extra calculations that we do for you when we're working out your benefit. We will have potentially up to 3 different calculations that we have to do. And in this example, we had the 80th scheme membership, which resulted in an annual pension of £5,500. There was the 60th scheme membership, which had an annual pension of £2,200. And there was the care pot, which was just a little bit over £4,229. We'll do all those calculations in the background, and we will give you one pension amount when you come to retire. And in this example, it's coming out at just shy of £12,000 per year with an automatic tax-free lump sum of £16,500. When you come to retire, you will have the option to increase your tax-free lump sum. Even if you were never a member of the old 80th scheme, you may not have any automatic lump sum at all, but everybody, no matter what scheme you're a member of and no matter what type of retirement you're facing, everybody gets the option to elect for some lump sum instead of pension. And it works on a ratio of 1 to 12. So for every £1 you give up of annual pension, it will buy you £12 in your tax-free lump sum. There is a maximum that HMRC will let you take as tax-free cash, and that is 25% of your total pension value. We will work out what your maximum is and we'll let you know. I do want to point out that the value of lump sum may not replace the value of pension given up. In its most simplest of terms, if you had a crystal ball and you knew you were going to live in retirement for longer than 12 years, you would know if you've done yourself out of money by going for the maximum conversion. But that's the option that's there. Everybody has this choice, and you just have to weigh up for your own circumstances what's going to work for you. Some people like the added security of having the maximum amount of pension coming into them each month, but you may have something sensible that you want to do with the lump sum that will provide an income in retirement, or indeed maybe you just want to clear off any debts or maybe any outstanding mortgage so as you have less outgoings in retirement. But it's entirely up to you. You just need to make sure that you can afford to live off that reduced pension. In our example that had a standard pension of just below £12,000 and an automatic lump sum of £16,500, if we do the calculation that works out what the maximum tax-free cash is, it will reduce the pension down from just shy of £12,000 down to just over £8,500. It will increase that tax-free lump sum from £16,500 all the way up to just over £57,000. And whilst that can be attractive, please note it is a one-off payment, and once it's spent, it's spent. Whereas you need to be able to ensure that you can afford to live off that reduced annual pension. And this is very often where people see the benefit of AVCs, because if you've been managing to squirrel away whatever you can into your AVC fund over the years, it means that you'll be sitting with an AVC pot, and depending on the value, as long as it's under that 25%, you can take that back as tax-free cash without having to give up your standard pension. But Sinead will show you how to work out your own conversion options when you get to your online account. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about in the slides today is death and survivors benefits. And there are 2 elements to the death and survivors benefits. If we look first at the survivors pensions, if when you die, you leave behind an eligible survivor, for example, a spouse, a civil partner, or a cohabiting partner, as long as you are free to marry them, they will be entitled to a survivor's pension payable for the rest of their life after you have gone. There are also children's pensions that would be payable to any eligible children that you leave behind. And what I mean by that is the definition of an eligible child includes a natural or adopted child, a stepchild, or a child accepted by you as a member of the family, providing they were dependent on you at the date of your death. If they're under 18, we will pay a pension to them up until age 18. We will continue paying that up to a maximum of age 23 if they remain in full-time education. Similarly, if there's a physical or mental impairment that means that they are dependent on you, we'll pay that for the duration of that impairment. So if that's permanent, it would potentially be paid permanently to the child after your death. However, when it comes to survivors' pensions, we will pay to whatever survivors you leave behind at that point in time. So you don't need to elect or nominate any survivors' pensions, but you can elect or nominate for the death grant. This is over and above any eligible survivors' pensions that we may pay out. We'll also pay a death grant. While you're an active member of the scheme, we will pay 3 times your assumed pensionable pay. What we mean by that is the pay that you would have earned had you been working normally. Maybe there's been some sickness, you've been on reduced pay or indeed no pay before you die. If that happens, we're not going to pay 3 times your reduced pay. We'll pay 3 times the amount that you would have earned had you been working normally. If you're part-time, it's your part-time earnings. Now, it is important to note that NILGOSC retains absolute discretion as to who we will pay the death grant to. Doesn't mean whether we pay it or not, we will always pay it. But to enable us to be able to pay that completely free of inheritance tax, we have to retain absolute discretion as to who we pay that to. And it means then that there's no tax paid on the death grant. But that is why it is so very important that you either complete an LGS 20 form or you go online and update your expression of wish. You can choose who you would like that death grant to go to. So you can nominate for your death grant, you can nominate a partner or children or siblings, whereas with the survivors' pensions, you don't need to nominate there, they're just automatic. If you leave behind an eligible survivor, we will pay a pension to the survivor. At this point, I'm going to step away from the slide, so if you bear with me, I'm going to share my other screen. Hopefully you can all see our NILGOSC website. This is just nilgosc.org.uk. There is a plethora of information on our website. So if you do ever have any questions, have a wee nosy to see if you can find anything out on the website. But there's a couple of key things that I just want to draw your attention to. First, underneath this more options, there's a drop down function. In here, we've a wee section called videos. Now we have a list of videos. They're all just a couple of minutes long. If you ever find yourself with a few minutes spare, do get online and have a wee play through some of these videos, because they explain things in a really simple manner. So that was just in under more options videos. The other thing that we have is the search function. For example, if you wanted to know about MacLeod, you can type in MacLeod and it will give you all the times MacLeod is mentioned on our website. Or indeed, if you know the name of the form, like the LGS 20, you can pop that detail in there and it will bring it to you. But back to the main section, the last thing I'm going to show you on our website is within the members section. Now this is to do with paying extra into the scheme. So if we go to the members section, then along the top here we have some options, and I want to go to the boosting your pension section. So if I click here, that will take us to our boosting your pension part of our website. And down here, the first two, we have the additional pension contributions and the additional AVCs that I talked about. So for the APC, this is when you're buying scheme pension. It's guaranteed, you know upfront how much you're getting, and it's index linked, so it'll rise each year in line with inflation. If you're looking to go down the route of an APC, come on to this part of our website. There's lots of information, some FAQs that that you can have a wee read through in your own time. But most importantly, we have the calculator. So if we click on this calculator, this is where you have the choice to either quote and apply for buying extra pension, where it's probably going to be at full cost to yourself, or on the right hand side, we have the option to quote and apply for buying lost pension. This is where your employer is going to pay 2/3 of the cost if you're covering that lost pension within 30 days of returning from your authorised unpaid leave of more than 30 days. So that's the APC calculator. You can go on there, pop your details in and find out how much it would cost you if you wanted to purchase some additional pension. Alternatively, if you want to know more about the AVCs, that has a separate page here. Again, it has a wee video that will sort of sum up everything that I can tell you about AVCs in a nice and easy to understand format. Again, there's lots of useful information that I would recommend you read through in your own time, but there's a couple of links down here that I want to draw your attention to. First and foremost, we have the Prudential Fund Guide. Now, when you're paying an AVC, you have to choose what level of investment you want to go with, and the fund guide will break down each of the different funds. Some of them have higher risk, and it goes down the scale to minimal through medium to minimal risk, and you'll be able to find out more about each of the different investment types. I do have to point out that nobody in NILGOSC is qualified to give financial advice, but we can certainly give you information, and this is one of those times we would recommend, if you're going down this route, have a wee read through the fund guide and see what level of risk you're comfortable with. And there's also a performance guide that gets updated each year, and that will show you how each of the funds have actually performed over the last year. And then finally, if you want to go ahead and set up your AVC fund, if you've decided what fund you want to invest in, you click on this link and it brings you to the Prudential website. The Prudential do the in-house AVC fund for all the local government schemes, well, for a lot of them in England and Wales. So you need to select your scheme name. So this is where you need to find the Northern Ireland Local Government Officers Superannuation Committee. So we're down in the ends, Northern Ireland Local Government Pension Scheme. So you select that, then you can follow on through and pop in your details. So I just wanted to show you where you could get a bit more information on you're paying extra, but now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sinead Nicholson. I'll just stop sharing and Sinead's going to take you through the online demonstration.
Ruth, just bear with me, I'll just share my screen. Can everybody see the screen there? Yeah. Yep. Okay, so back to our website here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a quick demonstration of My NILGOSC Pension Online. So the easiest way to get to it is if you go to our website, which is nilgosc.org.uk. If you notice up the top here, we have a register and a sign in button. So if you click on one of those, that'll bring you to My NILGOSC Pension Online. And this is what it'll look like whenever you get there. So what you need to do is, if you're already registered, you just want to pop in your username and your password in here and go through the login process. If you're not registered, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. We have the register with an activation key and register without an activation key. Unless we've sent you out a letter or communication with an activation key, which will be like a jumble of letters and numbers, most people won't have that activation key. So it'll be the second one that you'll go through, say, unless we've actually sent you a key out. So if you just click in here, it'll ask you for some personal details and then you sign up. If we hold the email address that you put in here on our administration software, then you'll get an email to that email address straight away and you can go through the registration process and set up a username and a password. If we don't hold the email address that you provide with us on our administration software, it'll be a day or two before you get the email. And that's just because we want to do some verification in-house to make sure that you are who you say you are, to make sure it's all secure. One thing I'd just like to point out here while we're doing this is we would really encourage you to give us your personal email address and not your work email address. If you've already signed up with your work email address, I'll show you how you can go in and change that. And the reason for that is you wouldn't believe the amount of times that if someone leaves their employment, moves to a different employer, and they forget to update their email address with us. And it means when we're sending you out notifications for your benefit statement or any other things, we're sending them to your work email address and you're not there anymore. The other issue that you might come across with that is if you're on annual leave and your emails are forwarded to your manager or to somebody else. And now we'll never send personal information in those emails, but it's just not ideal. And one of the other things that we actually had most recently was if you give us your work email address, your IT department can have quite strict rules in place. And just before Christmas, we sent out a communication regarding McLeod, and one of our employers blocked all the emails because they sort of thought they were coming through as spam. So really would encourage you to give us your personal email address, please. So that's how you would sign up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in. We have a demo account here. So I'm going to just log in with it. So if you just bear with me. You put your username and password in, and then as part of the process, there's an additional security question. This is just an extra layer of security. So put that in. And all being well, this brings you into your online account. Before we start going through here, I'm basically just going to do a quick whiz through some of the bigger tiles. I'm not going to go through everything. Just want to point out this is a live demonstration. Hopefully the technology works with us, but bear with me if we have any hiccups. This system is connected in real time to our administration software, which is great because it gives you real-time information. But sometimes if there's a lot of people on the system, there can be a bit of a lag. So just bear with it if you're getting the wee spinny wheel for a while. And also just to mention that although everybody's account might look the same on the front, there will be differences between the one that I'm about to show you and potentially in your account. For example, if you're paying additional contributions, like Ruth mentioned there, with additional pension, you might have some more information than someone else has. If you are married or have a cohabiting partner or whatever, you'll have a survivor's pension in here. If you're single or divorced, you won't. So just bear with, this is a demo account. So if you see anything that's slightly out of whack, it's just because we've got this set up as a demo. So when you log in, this is your home screen. You can see up here the basic details. This Mr. Demo is an active member. If he had more than one account with us, so either say he has 2 or 3 different part-time jobs, or if he was an active member in his current job, but he also had a deferred record with us, or if he also had a pension in payment, there would be a little green arrow up here, and that's how you flick between the different records that you have. So this member just has one active pension account. In the Your Details tile, I'll show you this. It has your personal details in here, but the good thing about it has in here is your contact details, which you can update. And this is where I was saying, if you've give us your work email address, if you can please go in here and change it to your personal email address, that would be great. So you simply click on the edit button. If you move house, you can change your address. You can give us your phone number, email address in here. So this is where if you want to change your email address, do it in here. The other thing that we have in here is your communication preference. In the last 30 years, we've made an effort to move some of our communications online. So most of our most of our active members, so people actively paying into the scheme, will be defaulted to electronic. That means that you'll get your pension benefit statements, your newsletters and everything online. Now, if you don't want that and you want to have your things posted to you, you can go in and change that to keep me informed by post. Otherwise, or if you've got it set to post, you can change it to electronic, and then you can click submit. And what that will do is that'll update any of those details instantly in real time. So you used to have to phone us if you changed your address or anything. Now you can do it yourself in there. Okay, so that's the Your Details tile. Membership details, again, just tells you who your employer is, what's your contribution rate and that type of thing. You can have a look at that yourself. Pension benefits tile, we have a couple of different things in here. Say if you're paying additional benefits, they'll be in there, but not everybody will have that. Ruth mentioned about the annual allowance, which is some tax charges. Again, that doesn't apply to very many people, but you can have a look in there and it'll tell you what limit you've used. The care account history is that scary table that Ruth showed you with all the numbers for every year you're a member of the scheme, and it'll show you what your pension build up was every year. And your latest pension value is just as it says there. If you click in there, it'll tell you what your pension is at this certain point of time, and it'll break that down into your career average and your final salary pension. But what I want to show you is some of our calculators, and the main one that I'm going to show you is the voluntary retirement one. So again, this is where this is connecting to our administration software. So just be patient with it and give it a minute, because it's going to give you real-time information. So sometimes it can just take a while to load. Okay, so whenever you go into this calculator, there is a little video at the top that talks you through how to use the calculator, but it's fairly simple. So whenever you click into it, it brings you to this section. And as you can see there, the selected date in there is your normal pension date. So for this member, they're due to retire without reductions on the 31st of December 2031. And if they retire at that time without any reductions, their annual pension that they will receive will be just under £8,500 a year. Now, as you can see, Ruth talked about, depending on when you were a member of the scheme, you might have an automatic lump sum. This member joined after, I think they joined in 2011 or something, so they don't have that automatic lump sum. But as Ruth mentioned, you can convert some of your annual pension into lump sum up to a maximum figure. So what we can do is we can use these sliders to go back and forward, and you can drag it along and it'll tell you. So if I want the maximum, I can get a maximum lump sum of £36,256, and that will reduce my pension from, I think it was about £8,500 down to £5,500 a year. And what you can do is you can pull that and go anywhere in between, and it'll just give you an idea of what you're likely to receive, and if you want to convert any of that to a lump sum. So as Ruth mentioned, if you're due to retire and somebody's getting married, or you have a mortgage that you want to pay off, and that's a certain amount, say you had £9,000 left to pay off your mortgage, you can say, right, well, I only need a lump sum of 9,000. So if I go to that, then I'll know that'll reduce my pension from 8,500 or so it was down to 7,700. And you can play about with that. And this is great because in the past, you would have had to phone us up and get a quotation, and you would have had to give us an exact date or an exact amount of lump sum that you would want. Whereas now you can go on at any time and you can play about with this and get as many figures as you want, rather than having to contact us, wait for 2 weeks, and we'll only give you maybe 2 or 3 options. So that's that. There's other information that you can put in here. One of the things Ruth mentioned, and I'll show you on the pension benefit statement page, but it's also here, is what your pay is. And this is the pay that your employer has provided us. And this is the pay that we'll divide by 49 to bank into your pension pot. So make sure that care pay is correct. And if it's not, please contact your employer. So it'll also give you more information up here. As I mentioned, this person joined after 2009, so they don't have an automatic lump sum. This shows what their survivor's pension would be. This is basing this information on the projected salary of 17,500. Now you can change that down here. If you know all this information, a lot of times we sort of tell you just leave it as it is unless you're 100% sure that what you're putting in is correct. Because if you put in an annual salary increase of 10% and you're only going to get 1% or 0% as it is at the moment for a lot of people, that'll throw your calculation way off. So unless you're sure for any like inflationary increases, best to leave it at 0, and that way at least you're being underquoted and not overquoted. But if you do know those details, you can click this little button here. You can put in if you know the inflationary increase you're going to get. Ruth mentioned to you about how you can join the 50/50 section of the scheme. If you knew you were going to go into the 50/50 section and how long you were going to be in that section for, you can put that information in there, and it'll take that all into account for whenever it's calculating your pension figure. The other thing we can do is, so that's if we're retiring at this selected date. The other thing we can do is we all want to know when's the earliest time we can retire. So you can change that date. So say I want to go a year early. So I'm going to change that from 2031 to 2030. And you can change this date to whatever you want. You can also change the day and the month. If you notice here, there's a little calendar icon where you can go in, or you can just type over it. So I've put in that I want to go a year early. And you can see that that's dropped my annual pension. I think it was 8,400 and it's dropped it down to 7,700. And again, then from that starting point, I can play around with the lump sum conversion. Again, if I want to see about if I'm going to go 2 years early, you can just type in the dates there and change them. And it will tell you exactly what you're due to get. And that way you can look and see what's the earliest I can afford to go, basically. And you can download and print copies of those quotations, and hit if you change the date, you can either hit calculate or just hit the enter button. So that is the voluntary retirement calculator. It's probably the one that's most used. So I'm not going to go in and show you all the other ones. They're all the same sort of principle. We've got a redundancy one. So if you're made redundant or let go on redundancy or business efficiency grounds and you're age 55 or over, that'll show you the pension that you're due to get. Deferred is if you're moving to an employer who's not in our scheme, say you get a new job in the next few months, you can go in there and that'll tell you what your close off figure is from us. Or, God forbid, if you're dying in service, that'll tell you. That's the thing Ruth talked about, where you generally have a payout of 3 times your annual salary, and that will tell you in there. And you can put in there how many, if you have a spouse, or how many kids you have, or and that'll work that out for you. So that's the calculator. One of the other things following on from that death and service calculator Ruth mentioned was her expression of wish. So this is where, if God forbid anything happens and you die as a member of the scheme, so you get that 3 times your annual salary. What would be really helpful is if you could tell us who you want that to go to. So that's where you can do this in here. Ruth talked about a form called an LGS 20 that you can fill in, but you can do it online very quick and easily. So in here, this person has said their husband, obviously if you're filling this in, put your husband's actual name or your wife or whoever, their date of birth, the percentage that you want to give them, the date you were married, and contact details. So you can put there for spouse or civil partners. Child beneficiaries, this person has their daughter, again, date of birth, and they're getting 50%. So they're doing 50% to their husband, 50% to their daughter. What you can do is if you've more than one child, you place this little plus button and you can add in as many children, and you can press the minus button to get rid of some of them. The other things you could do is other beneficiaries. So again, you can press plus. So this is someone who's not your spouse or child. So this is where you can put in your mum, your dad, your niece, a charity. If you have a cohabiting partner, put them in here, because up here in the spouse civil partner section, it asks you for a date of marriage or civil partnership. So if you have an eligible cohabiting partner, if you put them down in the other beneficiaries bit, because it doesn't have a date section in there. So one of the things just to point out to you, one of the slight limitations of this system is your percentages in here have to equal 100% exactly, and it doesn't take into consideration decimal points. So if you're putting 3 people, say you've got 3 kids and you want to put all 3 of them in, it won't let you do 33.3333%. You have to sort of pick your favorite one and give that child 34% and the other 2 33%. Now, if that's an issue for you, what you can do is fill this in, and then if you give us a ring, we can make a note on our system that if it ever happened, that we would split it equally. It's just the system needs you to add up to 100 and doesn't allow for decimal points in here. So the last thing I want to mention here is whenever you're filling this in, so you just click submit there and that'll put it through. Whenever you're on every summer checking your annual benefit statement, we recommend that people come in here and just review this. And even if you don't change anything, please just get the habit of every year, go in and click this submit button. And the reason why we ask you to do that is it date and time stamps it. And if anything was to happen to you, if you've given us these details 20 years ago, things could have changed and we're not aware of that. And it leaves it open to challenge if anybody comes in, if you have a new partner or anything like that, and they come in to challenge it. Whereas if you just get into the habit, even if it hasn't changed, of clicking the submit button every year and just leaving everything the same, it means that we can see, well, this person confirmed that that's who they wanted this money to go to 6 months ago. And it just makes things a lot easier, rather than if you haven't updated those in 20 years. So that's the expression of wish type. The annual benefit statement. So this is where you'll get an email each year, unless you've requested these by post, that your statement's online, and this is where you look at it. One of the things, I'll not go through the whole thing, that again Ruth wanted me to point out to you was here, this pay. Your care pension will pay, it's in section 3. Please go on and make sure that's correct, because that's the pay that we will have used to bank your pension. And make sure every year, whenever you log on to look at your statement, that it's really important, now that we're a career average scheme, that you do check your statement every year and you check that figure and make sure it's correct. And if you're not sure, speak to your employer. So I'll not go through the rest of the statement in much detail. It's got your personal details up here. Here it shows what your benefits are worth as of the 31st of March the previous year. it shows you the breakdown, it shows you what your pension would be worth if you stay in the scheme up until your normal pension age. And here, this is telling this person's normal pension age. So their state pension age is age 67. And it'll give you some, again, Ruth mentioned the lifetime allowance is being abolished, but as you can see, it's over £1 million and this person's only used 5.43%. So it's not that many people that have to worry about the lifetime allowance. There's also a section in there for notes. If there's any of your statement that you don't understand, there's a whole raft of notes in there that you can read. The last bit that I'm just going to show you then before I hand you back to Ruth is the document section. And this is where you can send us documents and we can send you documents. So in the My Document section, this is something that we haven't really used that much yet, but we're going to start using it. As you can see, because this is a demo account, there's loads of sort of rubbish stuff in here. But if we've sent you something and we tell you log on to your online account, we've sent you a document of some description, it'll be in here. And the name should be much more meaningful than these test documents here. They're just PDF documents, so if you just click on them, they'll open for you. And the other thing is, if we ask you for a document, so say when you join the scheme or you get married, we need a copy of your birth certificate or your marriage certificate, you simply can take a picture of it on your phone or scan it into your computer and go into document upload, select the files to upload, and that will access your browser or your file explorer. Choose the file and click upload, and that will send your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, whatever it is, that will send it straight to us. So you no longer have to post these things back into us. So I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions on that. The other tiles are fairly self-explanatory.
Sinead, there was one question that popped up a couple of times, if you don't mind. Can you show where members can see if they have already transferred in? Some people maybe did it a number of years ago and they can't remember if they did it or didn't. So can you just show what tile they need to go into? Okay, so in the membership details tile, sorry, I clicked that quite fast. So in this one here, this is the one I said, it shows you about your who your employer is, what's your contribution rate, that will have service details in here. So as you can see, this person transferred in. It doesn't give you a massive amount of detail, but it shows you here if there's any service breaks or transfers in. So this shows you the date they started, the date they ended. Back whenever this person transferred in, it was in the old scheme, so it brought you years of pension rather than a value of pension. But if you have a transfer in, it'll show you here. Similarly, like this person, you can see they went on strike for a year. So if they have, or if you took a career break or anything, it'll show you in this section. So that's in the membership details section. Thank you, Sinead. Are there any other questions? There was a couple of questions that came in to do with pay. Some people were saying, is this last year's pay? And I just wanted to highlight that, yes, 9 times out of 10, it will be last year's pay. Most of our employers are moving on to monthly returns, but currently our biggest employers are still only giving us financial information once a year. So for your online account, it may be showing the most recent pay as at the 31st of March last year. So yes, if you got any increments in April, or if there's been any rises since then, or if you've had any promotions since then, that will not be included. But that's just where Sinead had said about erring on the side of caution, and at least then if you're using the old pay, it's going to be an underquote rather than an overquote, but you can change that pay if you wish. Other than that, I will come back to the questions in a moment. I do have a couple more slides that I want to take you through, if you bear with me till I get that shared again. I will come back to the questions at the end, so don't worry about that, but we're nearly there. If I press present and choose resume, that should get me back to where I want to be. Yep. Okay. So this wee slide was just an overview of everything that Sinead talked to you about with your online account, the things that you can do online. But what I wanted to get talking to you now was, how much money do we actually need? I don't know if this is something that you've thought about, but whenever I tried to think about it, I'm like, how will I know How do you know? Now, I had seen this website, retirementlivingstandards.org.uk. The government has created this. They had spent a lot of time talking to people that were approaching retirement, some people that already are in retirement, asking questions about their lifestyle and their hopes for what sort of lifestyle they're planning to live in retirement. They looked at all the money coming in, all the money going out, and they came up with these figures. Now, they're a rule of thumb, they're not fact, and obviously it's going to be different depending on your own requirements and your own wishes for what sort of lifestyle you want to lead in retirement. But as a starting point, the government has published these standards. And as I say, if you can follow the link to retirementlivingstandards.org.uk, there's a lot of information there down for how they've come up with these figures, and it's really quite interesting. It talks about how much they assume you're going to be paying for each gift, depending on what lifestyle you're hoping for. But essentially what they're saying is, for a single person, the minimal amount of pension you want to aim to have coming in retirement to cover all your needs with a little bit left over for fun is £12,800 a year. Now, if you are in a couple, the combined income between the pair of you, they're recommending should be about 19,900. If you look at the moderate section, that's where you've got a bit more financial security and a bit more flexibility. I think they're assuming you're taking the odd holiday abroad, and they're saying to aim for 23,300 or 34,000 if you're in a couple. And then we can all dream about the comfortable lifestyle where I think it's 3 weeks in Europe every year. Well, you have to have saved an awful lot more than that. But please note that these are based on 2022 prices, so they haven't taken into consideration any of the increases that we've seen in the last year. They also assume you don't have any housing costs in retirement, so if you will have housing costs in retirement, you'll need to factor that in and add that on to the amounts that they're suggesting here. And it's at this point, whenever I say don't panic, don't forget you've got your state pension. Your NILGOSC pension will come into payment whenever you retire, but your state pension won't kick in until you hit your state pension age. Now, if you want to get a quote to find out how much state pension you're entitled to, you can log on to the website that I have at the top of this slide. But I think more conveniently, if you download the HMRC app, you'll be able to put in your government gateway ID and it'll show you your state pension right in front of you. To qualify for the full state pension, you need to have 35 years worth of national insurance contributions, and the current full state pension is £10,600 a year. Thanks to the triple lock, we're going to see, I think it's an 8.5% increase in April, so that is going to be going up to around about £11,500. But as I say, you need to have 35 years worth of national insurance contributions or equivalent to qualify for that. Again, if you get online to the app, you can see immediately if you have your 35 years. If you have any breaks, you do have the option to cover those breaks. I think you can go back 6 years, but if you use the app on your phone, they'll be able to tell you if you have breaks and if you can cover them, and if so, how much it's going to cost. But if you don't use the app, the link is there in your slides. The other thing that surprised me, although the government are the ones who tell us when our state pension age is, apparently payment is not automatic for your state pension. You do need to fill in a claim form. So do get online or use the app at least a couple of months ahead of your state pension age to get that requested, so as you can start the ball rolling for it. If you're thinking of deferring your state pension payment, I think the only reason why you might want to do that is for tax reasons. But if you do want to defer payment, it works out as an increase of 1% for every 9 weeks that it's delayed, which equates out to 5.8% for each year you defer payment. This next slide gives you some information on things that you can do now. At the top of the slide here, trace lost pensions. The government does have a pension tracing service where maybe you worked for an employer a number of decades ago and you can't remember, maybe you paid into the scheme or maybe you got a refund, you're not sure. The government does have a pension tracing service at this link on the slide where you can pop your details in and find out who the pension provider is. I have put in a wee note here to say any sort of Google search or any online search will give you a list of companies that will do this for you, but please do note that some of these companies will charge you a fee. Why would you pay a company a fee to do it if the government will do it for you for free? So please do use the online government website first and foremost. The other things you can do is request a state pension quote. Either go online and do it or download the app and get your state pension quotation. Find out if you're going to be getting that full state pension, and if not, find out how much you will be getting instead, and if you have any options to cover any gaps in your national insurance contributions. The government has also provided some help to us in the form of MoneyHelper. MoneyHelper are completely impartial and they can provide guidance on any day, everyday money questions that you may have. They can look at your budget for now in this current day and age. They can look at all your incomings and outgoings, and they can help you with the budget planner. There's a wee link there. But importantly, you can also use that budget planner to plan for your future income in retirement. That will help you see to make sure that you're covering for everything that you should be covered. The other link that MoneyHelper has there is for the midlife MOT. I did this myself during the summer and I found it really useful. They do recommend that you're 45 or over when you do the midlife MOT. I'm not quite there, but I ticked the box to say that I was, just so as I could get through the questionnaire, and it was actually really helpful. It looks at all the expenditures that you have and all the savings and bits and pieces that you're doing, the debt you may have, and it will really weigh it all up. It'll show you what's important, what is the debt that you want to clear first, or what is the bits that you haven't maybe thought about that you maybe should be thinking about now. It's really quite useful, so do get online and run through that midlife MOT. Of course, you've got your online account. Sinead's taken you through that demonstration. I would recommend, well, personally, what I do, I get my email every summer telling me that my benefit statement's online. I log into the online account. First thing I do is check my pay and my annual benefit statement is right. Then I go to the expression of wish and I hit that submit stamp to give NILGOSC an up-to-date timestamp. And then I immediately go to the early retirement calculator to see if I can retire early yet. But do get online, get used to it. You can click on everything. You can't wipe it out. You can't erase your savings. You can't break it in any way. So do get on there, click things and find out what they do, and start to really take control of your own planning for retirement. If any of you are in your first year of joining, you will have some decisions that you have a time limit on, things like transferring in from another pension provider or aggregating another NILGOSC pension pot. You've only got a year to do that. So if that's if you're in your first year, get a wriggle on and fill in those forms for us. And then finally, PensionWise is a branch of MoneyHelper, which again is from the government. It's independent, it's impartial. They can give you advice and guidance for your retirement. They know the NILGOSC scheme quite well. They won't be able to confirm figures for you or anything like that, but they'll be able to talk about our scheme in general. They'll also be able to help you with any personal pension queries that you may have or any AVC queries. But lastly, the last thing I want to mention is pension scams. The government has been working really hard in recent years to really crack down on pensions liberation, but unfortunately there are still some unscrupulous bodies out there that would love to get their hands on your defined benefit pension. So there's some warning signs that they recommend we tell you to watch out for. First and foremost, contact out of the blue is illegal. So whether that's text message, an email, a phone call, if you haven't requested that contact, it is illegal, and you should be you should report the company to the Information Commissioner's office. But just hang up the phone immediately. Don't talk to them. Similarly, if you've got anybody guaranteeing high returns, nobody can guarantee any returns, let alone high returns. So that is a warning sign that you should pay attention to. Similarly, if they're promising access before the UK minimum retirement age, that's simply not possible. Again, upfront cash incentives. If somebody's promising you anything that probably sounds too good to be true, chances are it is too good to be true. Time limited offers as well. I didn't want to forget that one. No reputable company is going to put pressure on you to make a decision now. So these are all wee things that you can watch out for. And if you're unsure, just end the conversation and you can find out more about the company afterwards. That has taken me to the end of today's presentation. Thank you all for bearing with me for this long. I know pensions isn't an easy subject to sit through, so thank you for that. I just want to point out, if you do want to find any more information, do have a wee look on our website. We do update it regularly. For example, if you want to find out anything to do with McLeod, get onto that search box and type McLeod in, and it'll give you all the information you'd ever need to know about that. Or if you have any specific queries, you can drop us an email. If you email info@nilgosc.org.uk, it will get through to our reception team, who will divide it out to the relevant section that will deal with the query. And you can give us a call at any time. Our offices are open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and you can even make an appointment to come in and see us over in the Hollywood Road in East Belfast. We would just ask that you give us a call before you do that to make sure that we have an interview room available to discuss with you. This is the point in time that I get on to any questions, and before I give you free rein to unmute yourself and ask me, I'm going to talk about a number of things that came up in the chat. First and foremost, there was a question about McLeod. McLeod protections are available for certain people who have membership at certain periods of time, and that's membership of a public sector pension scheme, either in Northern Ireland or across the water. We are currently going through a massive exercise to collect all the information that we need to make sure that anybody with McLeod protections will get that automatically. So there's nothing that you have to do yourself to make that happen. There's no election form or anything like that. If you are protected by McLeod, those protections will kick in automatically. But we have written out to some members that we are looking to ask if you have had membership of a public sector pension scheme before you were with NILGOSC. If we issued our members news in December there, if you got an LGS 10 from us, that's the form that you can use to fill in and tell us if you have other public sector pension scheme membership. That will mean then that we can apply those McLeod protections. As I say, more information is available on our website. It's key to point out that if you have another public sector pension, you don't need to have transferred it into us, nor do you need to have aggregated your separate NILGOSC pension pots. If you have them separate, you're already entitled. If it's a NILGOSC pension pot, we'll know about it, so don't panic. But if it is another public service pension scheme, you'll need to fill in the LGS 10 to let us know. There was another question that came up about the 85-year rule. The 85-year rule was a provision in older regulations that meant when your age and length of service added together added up to 85, you could retire early without reductions to your benefits. Now, to qualify for the 85-year rule, you had to have membership in the scheme before the 1st of October 2006. So if you have membership prior to then, you will have some 85-year rule protection. For example, if you got to age 60 and you had 25 years membership in the scheme, 60 plus 25 adds up to 85. So that would mean that that would have allowed you to retire early without reduction. However, it's gone from the regulations, so it's no longer in place. But any membership that you have prior to that will have some protections up until the 31st of March 2022. So if you have that membership, you will have 85-year rule protections. If you want to go early with 85-year rule protections, if you are looking at a retirement date of age 60 or later, the online calculator will automatically include those 85-year rule protections. But if you're looking at a retirement date before age 60, the online calculator doesn't include the 85-year rule protections, in which case you'll have to phone the office and request the calculation team provide you with a quotation for the rule of 85 switched on in full. Apologies if you joined after the scheme or if you joined the scheme after the 1st of October 2006, the 85-year rule is not relevant for you. Somebody had asked a question about transferring out. You can transfer out of the scheme at any time. You would need to opt out and transfer out. And yes, you can transfer to a personal pension. However, I can't think under what circumstances you would like to do that. Also, the government has recently put in extra legislation that requires you to seek independent financial advice depending on the level of your transfer. I think if your transfer value is worth more than 30k, you have to have taken independent financial advice before we are permitted to pay any transfer out. But yes, you can investigate a transfer. There's no cost for us providing a transfer out quote. There's no penalty or fee or anything like that. I think it's just that we only provide one quotation a year. If you're looking an updated one within a 12-month period, I think we would charge it at that point. But usually one a year is enough for you to take that to various other pension providers and investigate those transfers. Apologies if there's been any questions that have come in since I've been talking. I haven't been able to look at them. I'm happy to stay on. I know some of you have had to leave, but if anybody does have any questions that I haven't covered yet, please do feel free to unmute yourself. You can ask me and I'll do my best to answer for you.
Hi there.
Hi.
I guess I'm a wee bit confused. I haven't yet transferred in. I only joined the scheme in the end of November there, and I haven't transferred in from superannuation, the NHS superannuation. But so on your advice then, or from what you're saying, I need to both look at an LGS 10 and an LGS 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I have to do both. And then is there some way then that there's an illustration as to whether the McLeod is left in the NHS or brought across, or is that you can't give that advice at the minute?
You don't have to bring it across. If you have membership in the NHS that qualifies you for McLeod protections, you'll get that automatically from us. You don't need to transfer for that to happen.
Right, okay. I think I understand. We'll wait until I get the illustration through, probably.
Get the LGS 8 in and then we'll be able to contact them. We'll do a calculation to show you what your benefits would be worth if you transferred it into us. Then once you have the information in front of you, you can weigh up, is it going to be best to leave it separate and potentially access one pot before another, or if you want to combine them both and have them all in your current pension pot. It's entirely up to you. But yes, once you have the figures, it should make it easier for you to decide.
Okay, you don't know how long that usually takes? A few months maybe, I guess?
Yes, it's months, but do keep on us. Get the forms in as soon as you can and just check in every now and again until we've got it resolved.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Who else? I have somebody raised their hand there. Sorry, is that Kimberly McKnight? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask me a question?
Thanks, Ruth. Sorry. Can I thank you for answering my question in the chat. Okay, so I have been trying to find out about flexible retirement.
Yes.
You sent a leaflet to me, which my employer also sent to me.
Right.
So I don't understand, and I know that's not for you to comment. I'll go back to my employer, but all I need to establish is where do I get the application from? Is it the employer?
Just need to request in writing. Tell your employer, make the request that you would like to reduce your hours and release your pension.
Okay. Okay. Right, okay. And that's not, okay, I'll take it up with them. That's not for you. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There's a Kay McKee. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask me a question?
Hi Ruth. Yes, thank you. I have 19 years under 85-year rule. Are they free from reduction?
It will depend. With the 85-year rule, protections are so individual. No two people have the same level of protections, and it depends. First of all, there are a number of groups that depend when you were born and when you reach age 60. So there's 4 different groups, and then there are different periods of membership. What I would recommend is you get a quotation, because that will confirm exactly how much your protections are. But yes, if you have membership, usually it's your oldest membership that has the most protection. So it's usually anything before April 2008 will have the most protection, and it is quite often unreduced. But then going forward from 2008, that's where the protections start to reduce gradually. So the reductions will be lesser. Well,
Okay,
the protections
thank you.
will be lesser as you move on. Sorry,
Thank you.
apologies. The 85-year rule, because it's so individual for everyone, there's no rule of thumb or general overview, unfortunately.
Thank you.
But I hope that helps.
Thank
Leah Waters, do you want to unmute yourself and ask me a question?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I just
Oh, I think we've
October.
lost you.
Oh,
Sorry, apologies. I didn't quite hear that.
that's okay. So I've returned back from a career break since October, and just I suppose this is new knowledge to me about the lost pension and recovering it back.
Yeah.
So just really from what you've said, can I surmise that I'm outside the window of being able to ask
Your
for?
employer should have given you the option to cover that break within 30 days of your return, and the regulations do permit an employer to extend that 30-day limit, and usually an employer will extend it if it's their fault. If they've forgotten to tell you, then usually they will, but have a chat with them, and if needs be, sure, you can contact me separately.
That's lovely.
Outside of that.
And another wee question is, can you opt out of APCs once you've set it up, or
yes,
does it have to be a long-term thing?
Once you've set it up, presumably you're going to have a length of maybe 5 years that you're going to set this up. If something happens and you decide, I can't do this anymore, you can stop it at any time, and you will get awarded a pro rata. So for example, if you've done it for half the time you expected to, you'll be credited with half the amount of pension. But it means then once you've stopped it, if you want to restart it at some point, it will be a new contract based on your age at the new contract, which will be higher, which means it'll probably work out to be more expensive than it would have had the original contract continued. So yes, you can stop it and you may restart it, but it will be more expensive. Whereas if you've gone down the AVC route, you can stop it and start it as frequently as you wish.
Okay, yeah, just when you mentioned ABC, you said that the rate of benefit that you would get from that fluctuates, or you can't really comment on that, is that right?
Yeah, it depends on the investment options you've gone for. Some of the more risky ones have a possibility that they'll pay out and give you a big increase, but with the higher risk, there's a potential that your value can be worth less than what you'd paid in. You could be, if you're most risk averse, you can go for the minimal. I think is it the cash fund, where essentially they're not promising you any great leaps, but you know that it's you're still getting your 20% tax relief, so you're getting the benefit of that. But yes, you can't predict that. You won't know. You can look at the online guides that we have on our website that shows you how the funds have performed in the past, but we can't promise you what would happen in the future.
That's lovely. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you. Jackie, would you like to unmute yourself and ask me a question?
Yeah, sorry. I joined in 2008 and I bought 12.5 years in from a personal pension. Yep. Does that mean I'm still entitled to the 85 rule or not?
When did you join the scheme?
April 2008.
No, you had to be a scheme member before the 1st of October 2006.
Right. So
Sorry.
Even though we got in the years, it doesn't count.
That's correct. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks for that.
All right. Anybody else want to ask me a question? Bronya, do you want to ask me something?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
I just checked my service history there. So I actually rejoined the scheme the 29th of the 9th, 2006.
Okay.
Being a deferred member up until 2005. I think I had 15 years service then.
And did
So-
you combine?
No, I chose to defer, to keep them separate.
Okay, what I would recommend, if you don't mind, just because we're talking specifics, would you give
Yes,
me a
certainly.
call either tomorrow, tomorrow after 11 or Friday after lunch, and I can check that out for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Who's next? Jeffrey, do you want to ask me a question?
Hey Ruth.
Hi.
Your slide 12 on the AVC, and it's all the AVC fund can be taken as cash at retirement, subject to tax rules. I understand the tax rules is that 25% of your total pension, which would be across both NILGOSC and the Prudential for the AVC. So the question is, when you go to the PRU to lift your, or to take your AVC fund as cash in retirement, do they then come to you to understand the total of the pension pot, i.e. their element plus yours, or how does that work in practice? How does the PRU determine your pension pot when they only have the AVC part and you have the other part?
Well, they don't. We do. Whenever you're coming to retirement, we'll contact the Prudential and we'll get confirmation of what your fund value is. We'll then be able to work out the amount of our pension plus any lump sum you might have with us, plus your AVC fund. We'll then work out what the total pension fund value is, and then it's a quarter of that you can then take as the tax-free cash. So we will show you that whenever you get there. This slide I have here that basically showed you the example. The maximum lump sum when you factor in the amount of the AVC fund came out as 57,000. Now they have a standard lump sum already of 16,500. So we're looking at the difference between 16,500 up to 57. So there's an extra 40,000. And as long as your AVC fund, in this example, as long as it's under that 40,000, you can take it all back as tax-free cash. If your AVC fund was too high, you would have to take any of the excess AVC fund as additional pension.
Okay, so it's all administered effectively through yourselves. So
yeah,
the quote would come from yourselves, and you would then go back and say, an example you've got there, could I have the 40,000 from the PRU?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, no, that's all brilliant. Super, thank you.
Thank you. The next have we got, is that Myra? Am I hopefully pronouncing your name correct? Sorry.
Hi, Ruth. How are you? Ruth, thanks very much for that presentation. All very informative, really was, although there's always questions, aren't there? Ruth, I've been employed and we've been with NILGOSC since 1985.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if that 85-year rule kick in, and if so, when I go to the calculator, will it automatically take that into consideration?
If you are looking at a retirement date that is on or after your 60th birthday, then yes, the online calculator will include your 85-year rule protections, and you certainly will have some going back from 85. If you're looking at a retirement date of younger than age 60.
Sorry, I'll butt in there. I'm actually 62 at this stage, so this is something that's coming up at some stage. That was the other question actually I had. How do you know what age you could sort of retire? But again, I presume that you put in your figures, your dates and so on, and then it'll calculate it for you and you decide.
That's it. I mean, I go on every year to check, can I retire at 55, and I can't. So, I mean, for my aims, I'll be working till I'm 65 before I get my pension, what I want it to be. Either that or win the lottery in the meantime.
Okay.
All right.
And does it matter the fact that I've worked part-time over some of those years when I was raising family and then gone to full-time and so on?
If
Is
you
there something about the last 3 years of salary, was that always mentioned?
Yes, the last 3 years is a thing. In the final salary benefits, we'll automatically use the best out of your last 3 years worth of pay, but we also use the full-time equivalent. So if you've reduced your hours, that will not have any impact on your pension. But if you went part-time at any point whenever you were paying into the final salary scheme, so before 2015, if you worked part-time at any of in any of those years, you will only have credited a part of that year. For example, if you work 50% of a week, each year you'll build up 6 months. Basically, because we use the full-time equivalent, we have to balance that out by pro-rating down your service. But now that the final salary schemes are all closed, any reductions or increases that you do currently, they'll not have any impact on your final salary benefits because we will use the full-time equivalent.
Okay, so the fact that I've only done 2 years full time, I would need to do another year full time to be considered based on that salary? No?
No, we will use the
okay.
full-time equivalent whether you're
Okay.
full-time or not. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
All
much,
right.
Ruth.
Thank
That's
you.
lovely. Thank you very much again.
Who's next? Brona, is that? Sorry, I'm maybe not. I can't see the full name. Is it Brona? Would you like to ask me a question?
Can you hear me? Ruth,
I can, yes.
Ruth, that was the first time today I was able to get into the NILGOSC website.
Oh,
And,
brilliant.
yeah, it's good. But I'm shocked because the only job I see on there is a casual part-time job that I'm doing. I don't see a full-time job there.
There is a drop-down arrow that you need to click on that will take you into your other record. This is one of the things that we appreciate. It is really clunky and it really doesn't work well for anybody who has more than one pension account, because it means you need to do your calculations and do your slider in one record and then go up to the top, select there's a wee downward arrow or triangle, and then you need to go in and select your other pension reference number. Then you have to do all the calculations all over again and you have to add the two together. So we are aware that this doesn't work well for people with more than one record, and it is something that we are looking into for the future in the hopes that we will be able to provide you a more holistic view of all your benefits, but it'll not be before October this year, but do watch this space.
No, I've just clicked on the down arrow there and all I can see is the casual job and my last job, and now I'm worried.
Right, do me a wee favour and give me a phone after 11 tomorrow morning or after lunch on Friday, and I'll look into it for you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Anybody else? Is there anybody still hanging on that wants to ask me a question? David, are you asking me a question?
I had to keep leaving here and I'm going to come back again. Okay. If you retire early and take your work pension, how much of your AVC is tax-free, or do you get the lump sum?
Your lump sum is tax-free regardless. As long as you're within 25%, it is tax-free. But then it's your pension then that would be taxed if your earnings are above your personal allowance.
All right, lovely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to ask me anything?
Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
Hi, Ruth. This is David. Thanks for the great presentation. Ruth, I just want to double check. I would like to make some additional contributions to my pension.
Yep.
I just want to double check. What would be the best way? Is it APC or AVC?
They're the two options that you have, and it's entirely up to your circumstances as to what will dictate what is the best. NILGOSC staff aren't qualified or regulated to give financial advice, so we can't tell you one or the other. But I mean, we can give you the information about the two. One of the pros about an APC is it's guaranteed, you know, upfront what you're getting. It's not going to be devalued over time. The drawback for an APC is that it's expensive, which is very often what causes people to then go down the AVC route. the positive thing about the AVC route is that it's very flexible. You can decide how much you want to put in. You can stop it, start it, increase it, decrease it as and when you need to. But the drawback is you don't have control over what comes out. So it's entirely up to you. Do you want the added security of knowing that this is the extra pension that you're getting? In which case you'll just have to pay the higher costs. Alternatively, you just want to do something sensible with a bit of extra cash that you might have, in which case you may be happy enough to go down the AVC route. But I mean, if you're looking for advice, we would have to send you to an independent financial advisor, because NILGOSC staff can't give you advice on what is best.
Okay, just another wee question just there, Ruth. So if I choose to make a donation or not a donation to put more into my pension, does it affect my taxable pay, you know, like your pay amount on your P60?
It is contra tax is deducted at source, so you will pay less as a result of paying more into the scheme. For every £100 that you want to put into your AVC fund, it'll only cost you 80 quid in your bottom line pay pack.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Somebody had asked there about if fees are payable to the Prudential with an AVC. Yes, fees are payable depending on what investment option you've gone for, and that fund guide on our website that I had shown, that details what all the fees are. So that's some of them are a set amount and some of them are a percentage. But if you're interested, have a wee look at the fund guide under the useful links on our website, and you'll be able to find out how much those fees are. Anybody else want to ask me anything else? And do you want to ask me a question?
Sorry, can I ask a question? And if you mentioned 20 for every £100 there, in terms of AVCs and APCs, if you're in the higher tax bracket, is there more of a saving? Or
Yes. Apologies, I should have made that clear. Yes, if you pay more tax, you get more tax efficient savings. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there somebody else had a question for me?
Yes, Ruth, just a quick question. In terms of the APCs, the additional pension contributions, presumably you're going to buy those additional contributions based on, you know, the current pension, not a deferred pension, or not on based on the 1/60th pension. It's just on current, right?
It's just current pension, yeah. Okay, apologies to anybody that has been hanging around that I haven't got to, but I am in need of some caffeine right now. If you do have any questions, there are plenty of ways. You can either give us a call or drop us an email. Maybe you want to go away, have a little play around on the calculators. Maybe whenever you start to think about it a bit more for your own circumstances, maybe that you'll have new questions. You can get in touch with us at any time, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, or drop us a wee email. And lastly, I'd just like to say, if you could please provide us with some feedback, you can either use the QR code, or there is an online version that you can use that I would have sent in my email with a copy of the slides yesterday. If you could just let us know if there's anything that you would like to see that we do differently, or anything that we're not covering that you might like to see us covered in the future, please do let us know. But other than that, thank you very much for your patience this afternoon, and I'll see you soon.